with Glyn Dyar, 247 Sports, Dima Mixon with the Pine Belt News. Regular Tuesday video before Southern Miss heads on the road to South Alabama, down in Mobile. 2:30 kickoff, I believe, down there in Mobile. Glyn just obviously got done talking with Charles Huff like we always do. A couple players. First and foremost, we must discuss Braylon Braxton. Obviously, that's the biggest question surrounding this team. Charles Huff said he's quote-unquote feels better about him playing on Saturday, but it will rest upon what happens at practice tonight and tomorrow night. So I'm thinking we're going to know something pretty good by the time that availability report comes out Wednesday night.
Yeah, and then also that availability report, you can cloak it to,
Yeah, because it said probable and Braylon did not play.
Yeah.
So,
we may not know till Saturday.
But I think you'll get a distinction of whether or not it says, because the last availability report we have of him is questionable, which was the morning of Saturday. So if he's anything but available, I think then that's when we're like he may not play.
Yeah, and what it's going to come down to is an 85% to 90% Braylon Braxton give you a better chance to beat South Al than Landry Liddy. I mean, that's kind of what it's going to come down to. And also, you had mentioned on our way up here, you obviously want to win this game, but it's not going to determine the championship. The championship's going to be decided here against Troy.
Yep. Do
you want to risk further injury to Braylon's knee? I mean, there's lots to consider.
It really is, and I think it's a big question and something that, if you look at Charles Huff and you're like, hey, if you just looked at the, thought about him and was like, do you think Charles Huff is really going to sit Braylon so that, because the reason he played the rest of the game against Arkansas State is because Charles Huff looked Braylon in the eye and Braylon said, no, I'm good, coach.
Yeah.
And he said, how am I going to say no? I'm sure that Braylon said something similar to that last week, and he had to make a decision. And it sounded like in the post-game press conference after the Texas State game that Coach Huff was saying, like, maybe last week I made a mistake. I don't know. But now I think they're at this scenario where, personally, if it were me, Glenn, I don't think I would play him. I mean, I think next week's game is much more important than this game.
Yeah.
And South Alabama, where they are getting better, this team should beat South Alabama with Landry Liddy at quarterback. They don't pose the offensive threat that Texas State has, and they don't pose the defensive threat that I think that Troy might put on a Liddy if Braxton were to injure himself.
With the caveat that they don't play like they did the previous week.
Yeah.
Like Chris Jones said when he came out, said just something was off. And Coach Huff alluded to, maybe without Braylon, we all have to do things that we normally don't do. And that leads to, you get out of your plan. You're trying to make more plays than you need to be playing, gets you out of position. You're playing tight. I mean, that happened to him to some extent last week. And, if Braylon is not able to go, hopefully they've worked that out. It's more of a mindset thing than anything else. He also alluded to they've been getting away with things over the last few weeks and still winning football games. Penalties, things of that nature. They got to clean that up. It's eventually going to come back to bite you, and it did. And and this football team's been a team that learns lessons. I mean, they don't make the same mistake twice. That's the beauty of Coach Huff. So let's hope they clean some of that stuff up going forward.
Yeah, and one thing with the Texas, I keep thinking it was South Alabama, but with Texas State coming in here, it was like everything that we thought was the weakness of the team, Texas State had the ability to exploit it, right? They had the weapons on the outside. They had the offensive line who was good enough to push around the defensive front to run the football. They had the slippery running backs, the decently good quarterback. They had the offensive power to exploit Southern Miss's weaknesses on defense. I just don't know if I look down the schedule, other than a potential matchup with James Madison in the last week of the regular season, if another offense has that ability. South Alabama definitely doesn't, in my opinion.
No.
Now, Troy could, but what they displayed against Old Dominion, laying a goose egg.
No, neither one of those football. I mean, they're about, South Alabama's about running the football.
Yeah.
I mean, and they have a quarterback that can do that. That's going to be interesting, but it's a different set of rules to prepare for, probably easier to prepare for. But I'd mentioned in the presser that I thought that Texas State had schemed us up as good as anybody. And then talking to some of the players and things of that nature, I mean, they saw some things they hadn't seen from them. They ran that heavy set stuff in the 12 personnel, and then once they got up with the score, they didn't have to get out of it. They just run the ball down our throat. The defense, they did some different things, with a spoke look, and it was kind of some different rules. You
Yeah.
know, how do you adjust to it? I know Blake was up there trying to do different things, you know, trips to the boundary, split backs, you know, RPO game stuff, but it seemed like they had an answer for all of it. So, you know, let's chalk it up to a learning experience, just a tough night at the ballpark.
Yeah, for sure. And it's something we talked about after the game was kind of like, it felt like that game was just kind of the one you just throw out. It reminded me a lot of like a few years ago, the last time Southern Miss made it to a bowl game, 2022, when Georgia State came in here and just like rolled Southern Miss.
Yeah, on a rainy day.
On a rainy day, and it was just kind of like a random like one-off. I don't know if I would consider Texas State's game to be a one-off, but I think like the dynamics of how Texas State was able to exploit the weaknesses of Southern Miss is a one-off, because South Alabama does not have the offensive firepower that Texas State does, and Troy, while better than South Alabama, doesn't either. Now, James Madison definitely does. James Madison's going to be a whole other animal that they're going to have to be ready for if they get to there. But I think going back to Braylon, if you know that South Alabama doesn't pose those threats, number one. Number two, if you know that winning or losing the game doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, of course you want to win every game.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that.
These are ultra competitive people.
Yes, but
And so is our fan base.
yeah, of course you want to win every game. But to me, the most important game is next week against Troy.
It is.
You win that game, you win the West. Do you risk it? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, and I'm glad I'm not making that decision.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not the same team, and certainly not the same offense. And offense bleeds over to defense over the course of a game without Braylon Braxton. And for Texas State, it just made what they were doing to us so much more easier when you don't have to, you know, respect a running quarterback. It makes things so much easier.
Yeah.
So, you know, Braylon's just such a factor for a defense to prepare for. So, I like our chances with a 85 to 95% Braylon Braxton. Without Braylon, I don't know. I mean, you know,
But I think
up in
if
the
he's
air.
85 to 95%, I don't know if teams respect his running ability as much as they would if he was 100%.
well, just that you better respect his arm too.
Yeah.
So,
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. On South Alabama, though, Glenn, they do have one of the better defenses in the Sun Belt. They've been able to, you know, obviously the record is what it is, but they really stay in games. You know, they really don't get just rolled generally.
no, they've been good up front.
Right, and so
defensively.
so this defense, and with the way that Southern Miss has been struggling to run the ball over the past couple of weeks, does that concern you a little bit? Where South Alabama could maybe make them a little bit one-dimensional in the pass game?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, when Liddy's not a running quarterback, no disrespect to him, and Braylon at 85% doesn't have that weapon either. So yeah, you need to be able to run the football, and we need to be able to run the football multiple times this year and gotten away with it. And Coach Huff alluded to it in the presser. We need to be able to run the football. So I mean, that still, the question still remains. You know, can you run the football efficiently enough to set up everything else?
Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. And of course, Southern Miss has never beaten South Alabama in football, which is just a wild stat. Of course, South Alabama hasn't had a football program forever, but it's just
And
a
I
wild stat.
ran that past Elijah Metcalf and say, I know that you have nothing to do with this, and neither does Coach Huff, but are you aware? He goes, oh yeah, we're very much aware.
Yeah.
And he made the mention, you know, we weren't here, but I mean, we're here now, and this is family. We take the same responsibility as if, you know, that was our deal. So they're going into it with that mindset. I like that.
For sure. One thing I want to mention about South Alabama, and then we'll get out of here, but something that Charles Huff alluded to in that press conference, and I wanted to ask him about it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Glenn. So South Alabama, very similar to Southern Miss. You know, you bring in 80 new players or whatever it is. You know, now a lot of Group of 5 teams are having to do that now. It's not just a Southern Miss and South Alabama thing, but you see across college football the South Alabamas, the Arkansas States, where they brought in a lot of new players,
Yeah, I mean,
the
it's the way it
Louisianas.
is, you know.
But all of those teams took a lot of time to get going, right? And now I think South Alabama's probably playing their best football of the season, you know, getting a big win at ULM last week, all those things. But Southern Miss, on the other hand, didn't. And I think I have my answer to that, why that's the case. I would be curious to hear your answer, because, of course, yeah, they've lost some games, but they've definitely not looked like a team that had 100 new players here in the spring.
No, I just think that the big part starts with Coach Huff bringing that core of players here with his identity, you know, his recipe for success. And they came here and with Braylon Braxton as a hammer, quickly implemented that here at Southern Miss. It was like come along with us or move on. And those people, they brought people along with them. It was a quick adjustment. So,
Yeah, for sure.
And the core of talent he brought was solid.
Right, and the core of talent, but also the other pieces that he brought here that wasn't even from Marshall, players with playing experience. If you look at the defense side of the ball, I mean, almost all of them are juniors, seniors, you know, graduate seniors.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the offensive side, it's almost the same thing. which obviously that comes into the question of like next season, what is this team even going to look like?
Sure.
But right now, I think the experience that he brought in here was the difference, because you see a lot of teams like South Alabama, UL, Arkansas State. They expect players such as their wide receivers, their running backs, to be game wreckers week one. And for Southern Miss, there was an expectation of that. Like, we didn't know Michael Montgomery was going to be what he was going to do in this season. We thought, man, he could, could, but he's been above and beyond what they could get out of the transfer portal, and he didn't come from Marshall.
I mean,
of course.
he's going to be a 100 tackle guy.
Right. J.J. Hawkins is another guy you could point to. You could point to Jeffrey Pittman. To be honest, Jeffrey Pittman hadn't had a great college career before he came here.
Right.
And now he's tearing it up on the running back side.
Even a settling influence up front like Blake Buster. Just,
right.
Because he knows Coach Coughlin, he's here as well as the center. I mean, they cherry picked from their coaching staff. Brought in some of those extra pieces, really good pieces. Pieces that knew those coaches and knew it wasn't anything strange. They knew what was going to happen and what they were going to have to do when they got here.
The key to me is that they hit on positions that they needed to hit in the transfer portal.
Right.
And I don't know how many times you can expect them to do that, but they definitely nailed it this year. And Glyn, I'm not like peeking ahead to 2026 too much, but they're going to need to do it in a lot of ways next season.
Oh yeah, I mean, they lose 4 or 5 of the offensive linemen. They lose the majority of the defensive line. People are going to want to come pay Chris Jones. They want to pull Mike Montgomery.
Yeah.
I mean, they lose their corners. I mean, there's going to be
quarterback.
Who is that guy by the way?
I don't know.
Yeah, this is a little early yet, but yeah, there will be work to be done. And Coach Huff's proven over his career, especially at Marshall, that they can go get these guys. He's done it. He did it his whole time there, pulling in just
he has the
big time ball players, like his running back he pulled in there. That was a 2,000-yard rusher over his time there. I think he pulled him from Florida State. Really good guy. I think he's in the NFL now. But yeah, he has connections all across the country, and so do his coaching staff. I feel pretty good about that, and I think his collective is in good shape to let him go shopping, as they say.
For sure. That's obviously an off-season video that we just completely went off on, but
we can talk about this all day.
Yeah, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see, but more interesting right now is obviously the health of Braylon Braxton and what this team is going to look like and respond to at South Alabama in Mobile on Saturday. I will be there at the game at Mobile. Glyn is going to be enjoying some food, I think, somewhere, right?
Here.
There you go. But we'll be back on Thursday with our game picks and bold predictions. Thanks always for watching. For Glyn Dyar, I'm Dima Mixon. We'll see you on Thursday.